Saudi Arabia is secretly negotiating with Israel, and the result is going to stun the world and even shock Christians who think they've been watching Israel. What was once considered impossible appears to be emerging. The conservative Muslim kingdom of Saudi Arabia is signaling it's going to strike an unprecedented peace deal, catch that, with Israel, a country that is still known in some Saudi books as the Zionist enemy. Secretly, behind closed doors, the two nations are about to set the end times in motion, start sacrifices on the Temple Mount, and maybe begin the building of a third temple. Saudi Arabia, you say? When people think of end times in the Middle East, they think about Iran, maybe Egypt, maybe Turkey, but not Saudi Arabia. This is Bible teacher Nelson Walters, and today we're discussing what you haven't expected, but which is taking place secretly behind closed doors right now between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And this is something you should be keeping your eyes on. At the center of all this is Mohammed bin Salman, Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. When his father, Salman bin Abdullah Aziz, King of Saudi Arabia, passes on, his son will become king. He's the head of the Saudi royal family right now, which is one of the richest families in the whole world due to their oil resources. Salman is the third oldest head of state in the world. He's 88 years old. Obviously, it's only a matter of time until Mohammed bin Salman, known as MBS, takes over. But MBS is the de facto leader right now anyway, and it is MBS who is the one negotiating this deal. Not of the century, not the deal of a century, but maybe the deal of all time. Now, before we dig into this incredibly important topic, we'd like to give a shout out to Fisher Mann, a member of our advisory staff, who is one of the top experts on Saudi Arabia and MBS. Now, back to the deal. What is the biblical result of this deal? Isaiah 28:14-15 calls it a covenant with death. Hear the word of the Lord, you scoffers, who rule these people in Jerusalem, because you have said, we have made a covenant with death, and with Sheol, or the grave, we have made an agreement. When the overwhelming whip passes through, it will not come to us, for we have made lies our refuge, and in falsehood we have taken shelter. So Israel thinks this agreement is going to protect them from what Scripture calls the whip, or the scourge, which is an invasion from their Muslim neighbors. But the agreement that they're going to sign is a lie and won't stand up. So don't get optimistically excited about this agreement. It does not end well. So why is a Saudi like MBS getting involved with Israel and concerning himself with the Temple Mount? Well, a whole bunch of reasons, primary of which is that MBS wants to be the top Muslim in the whole world, a title that other Middle Eastern Muslims are trying to secure as well, as you probably know. And if MBS negotiates the deal of all time with Israel, he can likely claim that title. But before we get into that deal, let's discuss a little bit more about this MBS character. I'm sure you know MBS is most famous for the Jamal Khashoggi killing back in 2018. Khashoggi was a Saudi journalist who was critical of MBS, and fearing for his life, he went into exile into the USA. But back in September 2018, he went into the Saudi consulate in Turkey where he thought he would be safe and never walked out. This murder by Saudi agents has always been associated with MBS as its mastermind, and it's something MBS wants to erase from public memory. That is another reason he wants to negotiate a deal. MBS is also the mastermind behind the smart city, Neom, that many Christian scholars think might become the capital of Mystery Babylon. We have a wonderful video on Neom from last year. The link to this video is down in the description at the end of this video, if you want to watch it later. A deal of the century would also gain MBS additional funding for this futuristic city that he's building. But in this video, we're concerning ourselves with his dealings with Israel. You're probably aware that during the Trump administration, Israel signed a number of deals with Arab nations, inappropriately titled the Abraham Accords. And These countries now recognize Israel's right to exist. Saudi Arabia was not one of them. So this secret negotiation is swirling around the Saudis joining the Abraham Accords, mostly for protection. Both the Saudis and Israel fear their aggressive neighbors in the Middle East, Turkey and Iran. So if the Abraham Accord nations all joined together in a mutual protection pact, all of them would feel safer. However, from Isaiah 28 that we just read, you know from the Bible that although this deal seems to promise protection from the whip or scourge through some kind of peace accord, that in the end, it doesn't work out. And Israel is overcome anyway. So what exactly are the Saudis proposing? Well, as much as the defense pact interests the Saudis, they have publicly stated they won't agree to anything if that deal doesn't provide a homeland for the Palestinians. If Israel doesn't agree to divide their land and give some of it to the Palestinians. This is the way Mohammed bin Salman rises to the top of the Islamic world, by finally getting the deal of all time done. And MBS came up with an ingenious way to make that happen, by bringing the Kingdom of Jordan into the mix, someone that the Israelis pretty much trust, by having the Palestinian areas annexed to Jordan rather than having them form a separate country. The Palestinians, after all, have been in a struggle with Israel for years, and the Israelis don't trust them at all. So that one thing might make the Israelis less anxious about who's in control. And the plan seems to be working. Just Monday, August 1st, Prime Minister Netanyahu announced that he would be willing to make concessions to the Palestinians in order to get a Saudi deal done. And Foreign Minister Eli Cohen said exactly the same thing. The wheels are turning. Of course, remember Isaiah 28. It is a shelter of lies they are agreeing to, but it might make them feel better about it. As part of a deal they're proposing, Gaza and the West Bank will be demilitarized, all weapons taken out, and Jordan will change its name to reflect its new territory. The name, the Hashemite Kingdom of Palestine, has lately been suggested in an article published by all people, the Saudi royal family. Now, Jordan is also perfect for this plan for another reason. Because Israel is going to need something more than just a peace accord to give up their land, an act that God forbids, and one that he's going to punish upon the return of Jesus. Israel will likely be given access to the Temple Mount to resume the twice daily sacrifices, the one the Antichrist will eventually take away. They will be given that in exchange for the land, because who is currently controlling the Temple Mount? Why, Jordan is. So Jordan is the perfect partner for this deal for multiple reasons. But how will the world's 1.5 billion Muslims react to allowing Israel onto the Temple Mount? What they consider the third holiest site in Islam. You would think it would be horrendous, that it would be World War III. Well, to counteract this problem, for the past 3 years, the Saudis have been running a propaganda campaign in Islam telling them that Jerusalem isn't a holy site. The Saudis are now maintaining that the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount, one of the world's most ancient permanent Islamic buildings, isn't the right place at all, and that the actual one is located near Mecca in Saudi Arabia, and that the claim that Muslims make that Jerusalem is where their prophet Muhammad went into heaven is not accurate at all, but that area was near Mecca. Islamic tradition dictates that although the prophet Muhammad's physical body never did enter Jerusalem, they agree with that. The Muslim legend says that he ascended to heaven on a winged horse, which is said to have taken off from the foundation stone under the Dome of the Rock. And the Saudis are hard at work to get Muslims to believe a legend is all this really is. And if they do, it's going to be so much easier to trade away the right for Israelis to do sacrifices on the Temple Mount. So is this going to work? Personally, I think it will with Muslims south of Israel, those in the Arabian Peninsula and Egypt, those that have already signed the Abraham Accords. And that should probably be adequate to get this deal done and to divide the land of Israel. Now, I'm going to explain why I feel this way in just a few minutes, so hold on. But I think the issue will be enough to divide the Islamic world in two halves, those that agree with this and those that don't. And that divide, I think, is going to explain a lot of scripture that continues to confuse us today. But we're getting to all that in just a moment. But first, how will God feel about the dividing of his land? He won't be happy. Let's consider what it says Jesus says upon his return. For behold, in those days and at that time, when I restore the fortunes of Judah and Jerusalem, I will gather all the nations and bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat. And I will enter into judgment with them there on behalf of my people and my heritage Israel, because they have scattered them among the nations and have divided my land. Joel 3, 1 through 2. So dividing the land of promise is a major factor in Jesus judging the nations. And as we said in previous teachings, the Lord may judge the nations who are involved in this covenant, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and the USA, severely prior to his return with things like natural disasters, war, etc. Now, personally, I think the Saudis are going to pay a price with other Islamic nations sooner rather than later. And this is why I think you watch this channel, because we bring you information and scriptural insight to make the scriptures seem easy to understand and insights that you don't get anywhere else. And we help give you hope, why you can have hope despite all the difficult things that are just swirling all around us. Now, why do I think the Islamic nations are going to make the Saudis pay a price? If you notice in Scripture, at the midpoint of a tribulation, the Antichrist forces, who don't include any of those countries that we assume will agree to this covenant, but do include northern Islamic countries, are the ones to invade Israel. In fact, I think this issue explains a lot of scripture, like Daniel 11 and Ezekiel 38. To me, it explains a lot. Now, this is going to be a multi-part video series, and if the second part of this video on the covenant, probably part of the covenant with the many from Daniel 9:27, if that's been released, you can click right here and see how the Gog-Magog war and the kings of the north and the south all make perfect sense within the confines of his coming covenant. If not, click here to see how events in Israel are working to fulfill this. Till then, this is Nelson, and I will either see you here or there.